Wingman Joker, thank you for listening to this channel and please support the channel. Please subscribe. Chapter 51, Tom. Tom was sitting with his back to the cold cave wall. He was watching the sleeping Arya and Lily. Both of them had sleeping bags, while Peter and he had to sleep on the ground. It was a shame because he could not get a good look at their bodies. If he were still the guy he was 2 years ago, he would never get the chance to stay with such girls in a lifetime. He still remembers the day he became a player when his grandmother asked him to clean the attic where he accidentally broke that strange vase. A red light flew from it and entered his body, giving him the chance to become a player. At first, he did not understand what it meant, but it only took him a few days to get to know his powers. So he headed to a nearby mountain, where he camped for a few days and started to unleash and train his skills while planning what to do next. He asked himself many questions there. Was he the only one? Are there others? Should he reveal his powers? What can I do with this? How can I make some money? There were not many jobs requiring superpowers in modern society. Not clean ones anyway. He stayed perplexed for a while until he met her. When he saw her, she was running away in the woods, and some men in black were perusing her. At first, he didn't want to intervene as those men looked dangerous. But when he saw her face clearly, he stepped forward to save her life. She was beautiful, the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. That was until he met Lily though. He was able to defeat the 3 offenders easily. He took them by surprise. The first one was killed quickly. Then he activated his berserker skill and finished the other 2. This was the first time he killed someone, and he should have felt something, but he didn't have the time to do that. The girl who clung to him was poisoned by a strong aphrodisiac, and she was barely conscious. He didn't know what to do. But the girl did not give him a chance to think, and he wasn't really against it. So that night, she made him a real man. The next day, when he woke up, the girl was still there looking at him with an inspecting look. After some hesitation, she introduced herself as Nova von Astrum. According to her, her family was one of the world's 5 ruling families. They wanted to marry her to some young master as a political maneuver. Although she knew that this was her destiny a long time ago, she did not want to be married off to some pervert. So she took refuge with a close friend. But as it turned out, that friend was only using her. He wanted to rape her, ruining the prospect of a political marriage for her family and angering the forces behind her fiancé. She was able to escape thanks to a talisman she had, but she was already poisoned by then and that guy's men were able to find her quickly. That was when she met Tom. Tom was surprised by her story. He didn't fully believe her. How can the world be ruled by 5 families? He decided to ask her if she heard the term, player, and to his astonishment, she turned out to be a player too, much weaker than him, but still a player. So he told her his story. She was very pleased with him and decided to teach him all about the players and their rules and how the world and system worked. She didn't dare return to her family after losing her virginity, as that would put them in a tight spot with her fiancé's family. So they stayed together on that mountain for a week. She didn't let him touch her again though, as she was very shy. But he knew that she didn't hate him. He was taking his time with her. Their happy days ended when her family found them. She called the man who came to get her, brother. He was smiling at first, but when he learned from her that she was no longer a virgin, his face became as cold as ice. He immediately restrained her with some kind of a magical tool, then turned to Tom. He was going to kill him. But when his fist burning with blue flame was next to Tom's face, Nova, despite her shackles, stood in the way and took that hit for him. He could still remember how she hugged him with blood coming out of her mouth, and how she put the tattered talisman in his pocket and activated it for him. Her last words were, "Don't look for me." When he regained consciousness, he was in a valley a little far away from the mountain, so he returned there quickly to find it empty. Just a patch of blood on the ground remained where she saved him. After that, he decided that he will grow to be stronger and save her someday, so after he returned to the city, he used the internet and quickly found the Player's Book website Nova told him about. This was one of the ways rogue players connected and shared information. He began to investigate about the players' world, and was surprised to find that many of them had many wives. This seemed to be a common practice. They have the power and money anyway. There was an online market there too where all kinds of artifacts and gems were being traded. He didn't have any coins so he had to find a way to earn some, and one of those ways was raiding a dungeon. He was able to participate in 2 public dungeon raids and one he secretly discovered after that. There he was able to level up and gain some experience and treasures. And by selling some of them, he was able to amass a substantial amount of money. By the time he returned to school, he was no longer that poor boy. He is a rich man now. And his worldview has broadened. He will no longer allow any girl he likes to escape from his grasp. And when he becomes strong and saves Nova, she will have a lot of younger sisters to help her serve him. He already has 3 lovers. And 5 other potential future wives in the oven. Now how do I proceed, he thought as he looked at the 2 pretty sleeping girls in front of him. Arya had already started liking him, but she was a little older, and he had to take his time with her as she was not naive. As for Lily, she didn't treat him as coldly anymore. That was progress, but he can't touch her yet as she belonged to one of the families. He had to make her abandon them herself. Too bad he didn't meet the twins here, this was the perfect situation for picking up girls. He thought. As for Margaret and Anna, he didn't see those 2 as targets, they were just friends. Anna was not pretty enough, while Margaret was a slut. When Lily returned here he was still asleep. She must have left the guarding duty to Peter. But that guy was unreliable, so Tom stood up and went to check on him. Peter and George were his childhood friends. And were people he trusted. When Tom saw Peter, he was standing there playing with his phone, there seemed to be no goblins around. "Do you still have power in it?" asked Tom. "They have already been here for a day. Of course, this is the ZX 5200 model. It has enough energy to power a house. Do you know how much I paid for it? It is." Peter began to brag like usual. "I shouldn't have asked," thought Tom. It was 1 hour later when Lily and Arya joined them. They seemed to have rested well. "We need to proceed. I have already confirmed our path, as the goblins have left signs of the walls to guide them if they got lost. We can use those," he said as he pointed to a strange symbol on the wall, then he stepped forward letting the others follow. The path was dim lit as usual, and they didn't see any goblins for half an hour. Suddenly, Tom had a weird feeling, as if he was being watched. He stopped and started to look around. "Is there a problem?" asked Peter. "I can't tell, just a feeling." "Be on your guard," replied Tom as he advanced slowly with his trusted steel dagger in his hand. He was more of a sword guy, but he can't carry one all the time. He needs to buy one of those expensive Cosmos bags. He thought as he approached a dark patch in the tunnel. If there was an ambush it would be here. Sure enough, the next moment, 8 goblins sprung from behind the rocks around them. They were well hidden and camouflaged with the terrain. Their heads and bodies were full of dirt and mud. "Keep to the formation and fight," shouted Tom as he slashed at the first goblin, which seemed to have gained him a lot of hate from the others as 5 of them focused on him, leaving the rest of his team with 1 each. He attacked swiftly and managed to kill 3 of them when he felt a freezing chill in his back. This was his intuition. He made a mistake, there was a 9th goblin still in hiding. He wanted to turn and avoid its attack, but the other goblins suddenly threw themselves at him, ignoring their lives. So he had to defend on both sides. He was barely able to avoid that fatal attack, but that sneaky goblin was able to stab him in his thigh. Tom quickly killed him, but another one in the front was about to pierce him when Lily sprung out of nowhere and helped him fend the attack and kill the goblin. With her help, he was able to finish all the goblins quickly. "Sorry for the delay, I had to protect Arya," she said. Tom nodded his head and smiled as he felt that Lily was getting slightly warmer around him. "It's okay, I understand," he said. "I just got a little careless and was injured, so, he yelled suddenly, startling his team. "What happened?" asked Arya in concern as she watched Tom sit on the ground in pain. Tom didn't respond but just tore a part of his pants to look at his injury. It was a superficial wound. That stone dagger was not that sharp and didn't do much damage. His thigh did not hurt, it was his balls. The pain was as if someone was hitting him there with a brick. He was poisoned probably, but who would create such an evil poison? Chapter 52, Evil Poison. What an evil poison indeed, thought Victor as he hid and watched Tom scream in pain. This thing was used on a level 2000 emperor. He asked all the court, healers and alchemists to find a cure for it. But all failed. No system object could heal it, as it was a strange combination of traditional and system materials. In the end, the emperor had to release that concubine who boldly confessed that it was her doing. She also forced him to compensate her for the emotional injury he caused when he killed her parents and forced her to marry him. That was not a small amount. She made a sworn promise to give him the cure after 3 years and then ran away. The emperor could only look at her leaving with resentment. He was one of the strongest players in the world and was made a laughing stock by a little girl. He wanted to scream at her as she left, but could only utter a little yell as his nuts started to hurt him again. After 3 years, the poison and the method to cure it were secretly sent to the palace. No one knew who sent it or where it came from. What truly surprised them was the simplicity of this poison. Its existence opened the door to an entirely new field of toxicology and medicine. Sadly, the emperor didn't live to see that auspicious day. As he was deposed by his brother from the opposing faction, he forced him into a challenge for the throne and won easily as he decapitated the emperor, who had to stop in the middle of the fight to hold his crouch after he saw one of his brother's wives stripping in the audience. As the pain would only occur to him when he gets aroused or overly excited, like when Tom looked at Lily just now. The version Victor used on Tom was a light variant of the poison, so it would not make him distracted, but it would still hurt a lot. Victor still needs him to clear the dungeon and fall into the big trap he spent the previous day setting up. Now he only needs to wait and hope that the trap he prepared works. Getting rid of a scion was always a dangerous job, as the world tends to protect them from deadly situations. If the poison he just used was deadly, his attack would have never landed on Tom, or worst, maybe a cave-in would cause his death before he could order that goblin to attack. The only one who could confidently kill a scion is another one of them. So Victor had to prepare some nice cards. He stayed there and watched as Tom took out a healing pill from his inner pocket and put it in his mouth. After taking the pill, the wound on his leg healed quickly, to the astonishment of Peter and Arya, who couldn't hold herself and touched Tom's thigh where the wound used to be. It was really healed. But Tom, who looked at her slender hand touching his bare skin, could only scream as the pain attacked him again. Tears began to fall from his eyes. Who would create such an evil poison? This thing was the nemesis of all men. He needs to find a cure fast. Then he remembered something and looked at Arya. "Miss Arya, you are a merchant, right?" he asked. "Ah, yes," she replied. "You see, I seem to have been poisoned. Does the store you have access to have any antidotes?" he asked with a painful expression. Arya quickly operated her skill and looked at the store, and indeed it had such potion. "It has one, but I don't have enough to pay for it. It would cost 1,000 coins, she said. Such antidotes were expensive. For a 1,000 coins, she needed to kill a 1,000 goblin to get such amount, as the red gems can be exchanged for a 1 coin each. That is for novice merchants though. As her level grows also would be her discounts and special offers. Like how Victor buys whatever he wants at a 50% discount. "I will pay for it myself," said Tom as he operated his screen to send 1,000 coins to Arya. She quickly entered the store and placed an order for the basic antidote, but it didn't work. "It is not working," she said. "There is a screen telling me that all shop operations were locked." Tom frowned a little. Such a thing never happened to him before, but he heard that some dungeons have some weird rules. So this was probably one of them. "That's fine," he said as he received the coins Arya sent back. Neither of them realized that Victor, who was watching from the shadows, used one of his merchant administrator's functions to lock Arya's store for 24 hours. He can only use this lock once a month per player. But he wanted to plant a seed of mistrust for Arya in Tom's heart. "Can you walk?" Peter asked Tom with concern. "Yes, I should be fine," replied Tom, who didn't dare look at the girls anymore and started to walk in front of them after collecting the gems from the goblin's remains. "Ah, Tom, didn't you say you would protect us from the back? Why are you moving in the front?" asked Arya naively. "It's better this way," he answered with tears in his eyes. He does not dare walk in the back. He needed to clear this dungeon fast and get out to find a healer. He had just discovered that the pain only sticks him when he looks at a beautiful girl, and as he gets more excited the pain in his balls would grow exponentially. How can he touch a woman if this poison or curse was not cleared? Peter felt strange, but he quickly followed after Tom with Arya. As for Lily, she looked around searching for her young master, but she didn't find him and could only sigh and follow after her team. She felt that her young master was a real bully. But she had no idea to what degree. Victor smiled as he watched them leave, then looked at the map to locate the twins' group. They were about 3 hours walk away from his location. He sighed as he started to walk in their direction while killing some random goblins on the way. A young master like him should be resting on the lap of some beauty. He needed to get more hands to do the dirty work for him. Chapter 53. Margaret. Margaret held a deep secret. When she was young, her uncle, whom she lived with after her parents died, molested her. He later made her serve other men for money. But luckily for her, he was soon arrested and she was saved. But even after she moved out to live with her aunt, old nightmares still haunted her when she slept. Many of her friends considered her a slut. Margaret knew that well, but she didn't care. She understood the darkness of this world much better than any of them. She knew what she wanted, and she would do whatever she needed to get it. Right now, she was stranded with the twins and Anna in this weird dungeon as the screen said. They have been here for 1 day already. They were in a cave chamber with only one tunnel connecting it, making it easy to defend. They found this place a few hours ago. She was on guard duty now, sitting next to a tunnel entrance, holding a steel dagger. The twins and Anna slept soundly behind her. Luckily the cave was not cold, and they had 3 sleeping bags. The twins had 2 in their backpacks, and she carried 1. When Victor sent her a message this morning, she read his dirty mind easily. He was probably intending to force them to camp the night in the forest. So she brought a sleeping bag she had, just in case. When she saw the bags he and the twins were carrying this morning, she affirmed her guess. But not even in her wildest imagination, she would have guessed that they would be lost in a video game dungeon. How can such things exist in real life? Is this a dream? What are these player in class things? Did they think she was that naive? She thought it was a prank first, a very costly one. But after being hit by that goblin and saw blood coming from her arm, she realized this was not a trick nor a dream. When she woke up she was with the twins, while Anna was nearby. They hurried to her when she was screaming after seeing a goblin. Margaret hurried to save Anna and used her bag to hit him, but it was more nimble than she expected and it used that stone dagger to slash at her. It looked like a toy, but it was not. That thing was sharp. She was saved by the twins. They held steel daggers in their hands and hacked at that goblin, killing him. They seemed to have received some kind of martial arts training. They were not that good though, but much better than her. What happened after that surprised her even more. Anna hesitated for a moment, and instead of using the medical kit she had, she anxiously touched the wound, making that nasty slash mark begin to heal at a visible speed after a few seconds. Margaret looked at the red line on her arm that was barely visible now. It was still healing. Like magic. Everything here was like magic. She didn't want to believe it as she was a realist. She never liked fiction, but the truth is in plain sight in front of her. That status screen shimmered endlessly as if it was taunting her. It stated her class and attributes. What does an enchantress class mean anyway? Why did she have to get it? Was she a slut for real? Even the damn system is implying that. She wondered. Suddenly there was a faint sound of a phone's alarm. They decided to rest here for 6 hours. Each one of them would stay on guard for an hour and a half. Now the time was over and they needed to keep moving. Anna and the twin woke up and began to stretch up. Sleeping on the floor was not comfortable. Did anything happen while we slept? Asked Mina. No, we already cleared this area before, so there was no trouble. Let's eat something before we head out, she answered as she returned the dagger to Mana, while Mina nodded and started to take out some energy bars and water bottles from her bag. They were lucky that Victor packed all these, or they would have resorted to eating that ugly mushroom they saw the goblins munching at. I want to ask you something, Margaret said to the girls who sat down and began to eat. What? Answered Mina. I noticed that our classes have something to do with our life experiences, she said. For example, Anna liked to treat injured animals since she was a child, so she was granted a healer class, while I am an enchantress for obvious reasons. But the two of you said that your class was sword made. What did you do to earn your class? Margaret asked while squinting her eyes. Mina and Mana shivered a little and bowed their heads. Telling their friends about their class was a mistake. But they were not thinking straight at that time. Maybe it was a coincidence. Mina said, trying to escape the question. I don't believe so. Don't think that I am stupid. I have already noticed how you move around Victor, and how you repeatedly call him young master, before correcting yourselves. Are you his maids? Answer truthfully. I would keep your secret, and so would Anna, she asked and looked at the surprised Anna, who quickly nodded. She was curious and not a talkative girl anyway. Mana looked at her anxious sister, then chose to answer. Yes, that is true. We are young Master Victor's maids. And we are not living with our aunt. We work in that mansion, she said. What? Anna was shocked. She thought the twins would just deny Margaret's claims. Why would you work as maids at a young age? Do you need the money? I can help you. While my family is not super rich, we do run some stores. You just needed to tell me. Anna said. Margaret also felt that it was strange, so she asked, can you tell us the reason? Mina looked at Mana, who nodded her head. They chose to tell the truth. She looked at Margaret and Anna. I can tell you, but you two have to swear not to tell anyone, she said. Fine, we promise, they replied. The twins began to tell their story, how they were haunted by that lone shark, then how they broke into that mansion in the forest. And about Hilda, who saved them, forced them to work in the mansion in exchange for their lives. It was Aunt Hilda who taught us how to fight. She said all the servants in that family needed to learn how to fight. That's all I can tell you, Mina said, finishing her story. What? I didn't expect that. Why don't you call the police? They are threatening you and forcing you to be maids, asked Anna. That won't work. You won't believe how strong the family is. We tried once. We were returned to the mansion by the police themselves and we were punished hard for that escape, said Mina as she shivered remembering Hilda's punishment. Margaret squinted her eyes as she was re-evaluating Victor's worth. His family is even stronger than she had expected. As for Anna, she went straight to the twins and hugged them hard. We are sorry, you suffered a lot. Can I do anything to help you? She said with watery eyes. She was always a soft girl. It's okay, young Master Victor treats us very well, Mina said with a slight smile. She was thankful for Anna's feelings. Can't you leave them now that you have become players? Can they keep you? Asked Margaret, but this time it was Mana who shook her head. No, if my guess is correct, young Master Victor and Miss Lily should have been players before coming here, she said softly, shocking her friends. What? Why? Anna asked. Mina hesitated for a moment, then told them an abridged version of what happened with Nick that night. So you are saying that he should be a player to have that supernatural powers? Sounds reasonable, considering he was the one who got us here, said Margaret as she pondered. I can't believe that there are such superhumans in the world walking with normal people. I thought that we were the only ones, Anna said, making the girls nod in approval. If they were not experiencing this themselves they would never believe it. Someone told them about it. Let's get going, we need to search for an exit or the others. We only have rations for 2 more days, so we should act swiftly, said Margaret as she finished packing her sleeping bag. The girls nodded and carefully headed out of the chamber. They didn't know where they were heading to, but Margaret marked all the walls of all the tunnels they have been to, and she instructed the twins to keep track of the path and draw a map as they walked. If it were not for her with them, they would probably be in a bad situation. It was an hour later when they encountered the goblins. There were 3 of them, so the girls went into a formation where the twins took to the offense with their steel daggers, while Margaret defended Anna from the back, using a staff she got from one of the goblins. The battle went smoothly and they won with only Mina suffering a dagger stab in her leg. However, the ruckus they caused seemed to have alerted a team of 8 armed goblins that surprised them from the back when they rested after the battle. The girls didn't know it, but the reason for such a large team of goblins to be together was an order from the general. During the last day, fewer and fewer goblins were coming back to the base, so he ordered a few teams to patrol the dungeon. Margaret looked at them and knew that they were doomed. And they had only one chance to survive. Mina, take Anna and your sister and move forward. I will use my charm skill to lead them away, she said. She was not that heroic, but this was the only way. No, you would probably die, said Mana. It is our only way out. You 2 are already injured and can't fight, and I can tell that if one of you stayed the other will too. And Anna can't possibly hold or lure them, she said as she saw the goblins raise their spear and began to approach them carefully as if they were thinking, are those ugly monsters the ones who killed all our comrades? The girls looked at each other nervously, thinking what to do. No, we can't leave you, said Mina. Margaret sighed. Those girls were really stupid. They should always think of themselves first, she thought. Don't worry, my skill will keep me safe. They would never kill me. I am faster than them. She didn't lie, but her end would be worse than dead if she got caught. The girls didn't completely understand Margaret's skills, so they looked at her and asked. Are you sure? They asked as they thought of how she would sometimes make the goblin she was fighting with act weirdly. Yes, I will just lure them away and catch up with you later. She lied this time. Even if she escaped, she would have no way of locating the others in this maze. Fine, be careful, said Mana decisively as she helped Mina, whose leg wound was just healed and was having difficulty walking. They quickly backed away with Anna, as Margaret slowly approached the horde. The goblins looked at her strangely. Is she going to challenge them? What an ugly creature though. Her poor mother must have thrown her away when she saw the abomination she gave birth to. At least it still had arms and legs, the goblins thought. Slender arms and legs, they thought. Beautiful arms and legs, we should make her our wife, they thought. Swallowing their green saliva, as she activated her charming eyes skill, and ran away into a big tunnel to her side, hoping that she would lose the goblins and grant the girls time to find a refuge. The goblins didn't wait, they began to pursue her quickly with red fervorous eyes. They didn't run fast though, because of certain swollen things between their legs. Margaret was doing great and was able to gradually increase the distance between her and the goblins. But she had to stop when she realized she made a mistake, a big mistake. This tunnel, although it was wide, it had no branches, just a dead end. She stopped there, with tears filling her eyes. She didn't want such an ending. She wanted to find some young master to marry and live happily ever after. She slowly turned around to face her doom, thinking that she should probably kill herself. She didn't find any goblins behind her, just scattered corpses slowly turning into dust, and a young man with purplish gray hair standing there like some kind of a thug. He was insolently inspecting her with his eyes as if he was inspecting some vase in an antique store. "You are interesting. Are you looking for a pimp?" he said with a warm yet arrogant smile, making Margaret want to kick him between his legs. That is not a word her Prince Charming should be saying. But her actions were different from her thoughts. Although she looked tough, she was still a little girl, and she needed a lot of courage to pull out that stunt. She threw herself in Victor's arms and began to sob. She was saved at last. Chapter 54. Deal. That was the easiest hunt Victor ever did. When he reached the area the girls were in, he saw them heading to an opposing tunnel while the goblins were piercing someone to the right. Looking at the map, he could tell that this one was a dead end, so he quickly followed them and started to kill the goblins silently from the back. He didn't have to use his disguise skill. Those fools didn't turn to look at their dying friends, even after hearing their last screams. She made them lose all reason. If they had won, to begin with. He even had the leisure to collect their gems as they fell down and disintegrated. Victor had just finished stabbing the last goblin and collecting its gem when Margaret reached the dead end. He could see the desperate look in her eyes when she turned around, so he could only utter some stupid joke to cheer her up. He looked at her, sobbing in his embrace, and knew that she was not as strong as she appeared to be. Let's see how she did it, he thought. Name: Margaret Ringer. Level: 0. Class: Enchantress. Authority: 2. Strength: 22. Agility: 22. Intelligence: 25. Luck: 12. Charm: 35. Order: 10. Skills: Captivating Touch A. Charm Eyes A. Lure Dance D. Fate Status: Eat Raising. An enchantress, this was a rare class. But it really suited her with her spicy personality, beautiful figure, and red curly hair. Did you finish your mating ritual? My shirt has become a wet towel because of your tears, said Victor insensitively. If I were any other girl, your nuts would have been kicked open by now, do you know that? Margaret said with her face still resting on his chest. She didn't let go. Victor could feel her shaking body ease a little. We need to catch up with the rest, we can continue this later, he said with a smile, making Margaret remember about her friends and reluctantly let go of Victor's shirt. But she didn't let go of his hand. What are you doing? He asked her. I have already decided, she said with an excited voice as she started to walk while holding Victor's hand, dragging him behind her. He could still see that her legs were still a little shaky, so he didn't resist. I am going to be your girlfriend, she said, not letting Victor, who was behind her, see her embarrassed face. He could see her red ears though. Is that for you to decide? Victor asked her with an amused smile. Yup, and you would be an idiot to refuse such a beauty, she said cockily, making Victor forget his arrogant persona. This young master is not against the idea, he said with a smirk, but I have to warn you, I have a fiancé, plus I already have many girls around me. So you won't be the only one, he said, not refusing her. I belong to a big family and we have a lot of rules. I don't mind taking care of you, but you must be sure, this matter is no joke, he asked in a serious voice he rarely used. Margaret hesitated, she stayed silent not knowing what to say. She continued to go forward, still not letting go of his hand. He knew that she didn't know what to do. Since you are currently still suffering from a shock and not thinking straight, I will give you time to reconsider. After we leave this dungeon, I will have to go away for a few days. I will call you and ask you about your decision when I return, he said, making Margaret relax a little. Fine, she said, not letting go of his hand. Soon they reached the road fork he was at earlier. This is where I was separated from the others, I don't know where they went, she said, changing the subject. A hint of nervousness can be felt in her voice. Follow me, he said. This was his time to lead. He walked through one of the tunnels while Margaret, who held his hand firmly, was dragged behind him. She looked at his strong back and thought about what he told her. He didn't say what position he would give her, but she understood that she would not have a high position in his heart. But would she get another chance to meet him once they left this dungeon? They belong to different worlds. It's not like we would never see each other, said Victor, who could easily read the mind of a little girl. Now you have become a player. So you can join this young master to be admitted immediately to the special class in the elite academy, he said. What? She was surprised. The one Tom is planning to attend. Exactly, the special class is meant for players. It is a little costly though, he said. Doesn't that mean Tom was a player before coming here? What does it really mean to be a player, and what is this system thing? She asked. Yes, Tom was a player before coming here. As for the system, I will brief you when we meet the others, he said. Margaret could not hide the smile on her face as she walked. She was really poor and had to work part-time after school to support herself. She could have never dreamed of attending such a school. Now she had a chance. Are you happy that you can still be with Tom? He asked her with a sneer after seeing the smile on her face. Maybe. Jealous already? How about you sponsor me? I will compensate you, she asked as she squeezed Victor's hand. Attending that school was costly. Tom told her that, although he was admitted there, he still had to pay a hefty sum. You don't need me. Have you been collecting the gems? Those red things falling from the goblins, he asked. Ah, yes. Are those valuable? She asked as he has piqued her interest. The girls collected those as they thought they are pretty. They are usually priced by coins, the player's currency, one for each red gem. But if you want to exchange it outside, each coin can be exchanged from the system for 1 gram of gold. Be warned though, you can easily sell coins, but it's very hard to buy them with money, he said. Margaret was surprised. While every gem by itself is not very valuable, if someone were to make it his job to hunt in dungeons, he would get rich quickly. Is that how Tom got rich? She asked with an obvious curiosity in her eyes. Probably. But dungeons are not that common. And other dungeons may not be this easy, he said as if he read her mind. Those are just low-level gems. If you were to get some high-level ones or an artifact, that would be a different story, he said as he slowed down. They are getting near. Like this one? Asked Margaret as she pulled out a jade pendant she took from one goblin. Victor stopped and looked at the pendant with surprise. This thing was valuable. The hiker who was lost in the dungeon in his past life had it on him. But after he was killed they didn't find it on his body. There was a rumor back then that the hiker didn't reveal any secrets of the player's existence. But this was just a cover, as the one who killed him was aiming for the treasure he found in the dungeon. This thing would get you killed, Victor said in a cold voice as he looked at the pendant. Pendant of Ahmm's equipment, S rank. Adds 1 authority. Equipping condition. Authority greater than 1 and an authority less than 5. By itself, this thing is a treasure for beginners. It was useless to the high-level players. So it had no real value despite its S rank, which would inflate its price. But if it were to be used in a specific way, it can help semi-players who do not have the qualifications to equip them to become players. But this method is a secret. And it comes at a certain cost. But for desperate people, it is the only way. Right now this was not very expensive. But if those families knew its uses, it would be invaluable. Margaret was surprised by his tone and she looked at the pendant. What does it do? She asked. Increase authority. I will tell you about that later. But many people would kill their parents for such things, he said, making her look at the pendant with interest. If it were someone else here, you would probably be dead, he said, making her shiver. The first rule in the dungeon is not to reveal your spoils. Don't do such stupid things in the future, even if you trust the other. Many players died because of such stupidity, he reprimanded her. You can't keep this, keeping it is very dangerous and not worth the risk. I will offer you 2 methods. The first one is to auction it. It would get you a hefty price but would put a mark on you and many people would know that you have a lot of money. While the other is to sell it to me, he said, making Margaret nervous, not knowing what to do. How much would you pay? She asked nervously. This thing may be precious but only for beginners. It would only fetch you about 50,000 coins if you sell it to the system store. However, it is very rare and has an S rank. If you auction it, its price would be about 100,000. But can you keep that money with your background? I would only pay you 90,000 coins for it, he said. Who are you going to sell it to and for how much? She asked. She was not stupid. To my grandmother, and not for money, but for a favor. She needs this thing, he said the truth. Quote, Margaret hesitated for a moment, then looked at Victor and handed him the pendant. She decided to trust him for now. He could have easily killed her and blamed it on the goblins. And this was his family's mountain after all. If she wanted this thing she wouldn't be able to keep it after they leave. Do you want me to pay you with coins or real money? he asked as he took the pendant and put it in a cloth bag. Do you have that much money on you now? She said jokingly. Okay, remember, coins are easy to sell, hard to buy. No one sells their coins, only beginner players and fools do that. Usually, players make their trades with a mix of coins and money. He said as he operated his menu and transferred 90,000 coins to her. I took advantage of you, so I will also add another $1.000, you can use it to buy a few things. We don't have internet access here, so I will transfer it to you in a few days. The school would cost you 100 coins, they don't accept regular money for the special class. He said. Margaret was pleased when she saw the notification of the coins transfer, she is now rich. As for Victor's claims about the pendant's value, she would check about their validity later. He didn't seem to be scamming her and she would consider this a test for him. If he was telling her the truth, that would mean he is trustworthy, and she would be at ease in trusting herself to him. Now, she had enough money to spend for a lifetime, but no background and no power at all. She had a lot of choices to make, and would think about it carefully for the next few days. Does she still need a young master to rely on? She didn't know, but she did not let go of Victor's hand. How long are you planning on occupying my hand? He asked with a smile. As long as I want to, she said cheekily. I might have to start to charging you per the hour, he said. I have other ways to pay you, she spat back. He couldn't contend with this girl. He was afraid that if he molested her anymore she would eat him whole. And he was not ready for such actions before his blood's awakening. If you don't want your friends to see us, you better let go, they are behind the corner. He said, making her hesitate a little. He took the chance to free his hand and run towards the cave where the girls were sitting. Margaret, who was surprised, kicked the ground and began to curse at him as she quickly followed. Chapter 55. Crash Course. The girls were sitting in a safe cavern, nervously biting their lips. Anna was busy healing Mina's leg, while Mana was holding the bags. They were pondering whether they should head back and look for Margaret when they heard Victor clear his throat. They looked nervously at the entrance while raising their daggers, but they quickly brought them down while tears slowly crept down their cheeks when they saw that it was Victor, who was followed by Margaret. She seemed to be cursing at him. Victor looked at them and shook his head. They were careless. They should have kept one of them to guard the cavern's entrance. But their skills are not bad at all, he thought as he used his appraisal skills. Name: Mina. Level: 0. Class: Sword Maid. Authority: 3. Strength: 36. Agility: 26. Intelligence: 20. Luck: 11. Charm: 21. Order: 10. Skills: Yin Yang Sword Arts, SS. Spotless Cleaning, B. Dagger Arts, C. Cooking, F. Fate Status, A. Name: Anna Brown. Level: 0. Class: Healer. Authority: 2. Strength: 20. Agility: 22. Intelligence: 25. Luck: 12. Charm: 35. Order: 10. Skills: Healing Touch, A. Medicine Brewing, C. Minor Drugs Analysis, E. Quick Learning, S. Fate Status, C. With those skills, the twins are fit to be his maids, and those SS-ranked sword skills would come to good use in his hands. As for Anna, she was a healer and that surprised him. Healers are not very common. He should take her to Tom ASAP so that he would lose all hope sooner. Margaret, are you all right? Anna stood up and ran to Margaret, then hugged her tightly. They were best friends. As for the twins, they bowed slightly to Victor, saluting him before checking on Margaret. They were really worried about her. She risked her life to save them after all. Victor didn't mind. He just went inside the cavern and found a place where he placed his backpack, then took a small portable folding chair from it, set it up, then sat on it watching the relieved girls chatter about what happened after they split up. It took them a few minutes to finish their stories. Margaret had told them how much dangerous her situation was and how Victor saved her. When they looked back at Victor, they had an admiring look in their eyes, but the admiration all went away when they saw him sitting on his chair drinking a can of soda with his legs crossed. Was he carrying that camping chair with him all this time? What are you looking at? Come and sit around me, I have to tell you a few important things, he shouted at the astonished girls. They looked at each other, then hurried to sit down. They knew what he is going to tell them about, and they had many questions. First things first, he said, enjoying the feeling of being surrounded by girls with curious eyes. Did you tell each other your classes? Tell them to me, he ordered. The girls quickly nodded and told him what their classes were. Fools, he scolded them. Never reveal your class casually. That would put you in grave danger. And if you had to do that, keep a few of your skills a secret for contingencies. He said, making the girls bow their heads in shame. Why did he scold us? He was the one who asked us to tell him. They thought. Victor looked at them and smiled. Okay, now I will tell you about the system, he said as he began to explain their situation to them, the same way Tom did to the other group. After he finished, he looked at the astonished girls and asked, "Are there any questions? Young master, do our life experiences affect our class and attributes?" asked Mina after remembering Margaret's theory. Victor looked at her in surprise, not because of the question, but because she addressed him as young master, and the other girls did not find it strange, so he knew that they told the others the truth about being his maids. But it was not a secret, so he did not care. He nodded his head responding to her question. Yes, the classes would be granted based on bloodline, potential, fate, and life experiences. In a dungeon awakening your class would be chosen automatically, he said. Are those classes useful in real life? Can we use the skill in modern society? Asked Anna. She wanted to use her skills to help people. Yes, you are free to use them, but know your limits and be sure to disguise them as something else. For example, Anna, you should try to go to a medicine or a nursing school. Later in your work you can use your skill in secret to help the patients. He answered, making Anna nod her head. It seems like she has already decided. What about me and the twins? Are our classes valuable? Asked Margaret as she wondered if she had to find a job in some shady industry. The twins are my maids, as I believe they have already told you, he said, making the twins avert their gaze in shame. Their classes are valuable for me and they would use it to serve me. He said arrogantly, making the twins' ears turn red. As for you, Margaret, it would depend on who you would work for. He said with a smirk, as if he understood her concerns, and made her want to slap him. Don't worry, after leaving here, you would be asked by some people to join their factions. They may be already there when we leave or they may come to you later. You are free to decide, but I have some advice for you. He said as he looked at the girls seriously. Anna, you should not reveal your class, and try to join the Medicine Valley first. It is a reclusive power that does not limit its members' freedom. With their assistance and experience, you would have a great future. I will send you the way of contacting them after we leave here. Their test is a little troublesome, but with your skills, it would be a breeze. A young healer like you is always welcome there. If you joined any other faction you would be under many restrictions, as healers are a precious asset. He said, making Anna nod. As for you, Margaret, you are free to join some faction or stay a free player. Your class does not need much training, and it is quite useful if you knew how to use it. Mina and Mana are already considered part of my family as my maids. He said. What are the benefits of joining a faction? Isn't being free better? Margaret asked. Not necessarily, although a free player is free of many of the rules that govern sects and families. He can be killed easily as he has no background, and he has to suffer a lot to gain sufficient resources to level up. There is a Free Players Guild though, they established it a few years ago. But I have no idea about their work, he lied. The Free Guild would grow to be one of the great powers in the world thanks to all the scions who joined it seeking freedom. But it was full of opportunistic people and its internal struggles are more intense than those in the families. If you join a faction, you would lose some freedom, depending on its rules. However, you would gain a lot of resources and information. If you are talented, your growth would be only a matter of time. He said. There are many factions and player organizations, some are small while others are big. The most prominent ones are called the 3 sects and the 5 families. He added. What about you and Tom? She asked curiously. Tom should be a free player, but I didn't investigate him yet so I don't genuinely know. As for me, I am a member of the Von Weiss family. He said proudly. Are your family that powerful and full of players? She asked as she already knew that he was super rich. Yes, between the top 5 families, it is ranked second. In fact, my family owns an entire country, and half of Vane City is under the jurisdiction of my family. He said arrogantly, making the girls gasp in surprise. They didn't think that he was that powerful. But as a friend, I have to advise you against joining any family. Families are the worst thing to join, as they have a lot of rules and internal struggles, and it's very hard to be promoted without having their bloodline. That's all I can tell you about them. He said, making the girls ponder. Is there a way to leave the young master's family? Asked Mana anxiously. If they can't leave, how can one of them marry Tom? And what if another monster like Nick used the family's rules to assault them? Not easily, but you are this young master's maids. So you will stay with me, and you don't have to worry about anything else. I will not limit your freedom, and I can let you leave the family if needed, although I would have to pay a certain price," he said, making the girls feel relieved, as they haven't decided about Tom yet. "Can I work for you without joining your family?" asked Margaret with interest. "Yes, but we have to talk about that later when you make your decision," Victor said, making Margaret nod. The girls didn't get which decision he meant. "Now, we rest for 2 hours. I know where the others are, but you are in no condition to go as the path is full of goblins," he said as he relaxed on his chair and closed his eyes. He wanted to let the twins massage his shoulders, but they needed to rest as he intends to make them take a mandatory intense crash course in dungeon conquering later. The girls sat down to rest and eat something. "You don't need to ration the food, just have a good meal, we should be able to leave tomorrow," he told them as he saw them eating just a little. The girls nodded and continued their meal. Margaret was tempted to molest Victor a little, but she was tired and needed some rest, so she took out her sleeping bag and took a little nap. After 2 hours they left the safe cavern and started to head to where their friends were under Victor's guidance. He arranged them into a fighting formation and began to teach them how to fight efficiently while he tanked in the front. They didn't know it, but Victor took them on a roundabout road trip, making them visit every goblin gathering he can spot on the map. He needed to train them, and he can't let all those experience points and gems go to waste. Soon they got how to fight efficiently with their classes and skills. Victor stayed on the front, only letting a certain number of goblins pass by him. With his attributes and fighting experience, he could have cleared this dungeon alone if he wanted to. When the goblins got past Victor, they would encounter the twins who would engage with it, while Margaret would act as a distraction and sometimes would lure a goblin away to kill it. Anna stayed in the back and only went to the front to heal injuries and sometimes to kill a weak goblin, under Victor's guidance. He told her that she needed to do so, in order to gather experience. The experience points and rewards would be distributed, once the dungeon was cleared, on basis of clearing contribution. So they didn't feel any change for now. After 5 hours of continuous fighting, the girls were very tired. They began to doubt whether Victor knew where their friends were, or if he was deliberately taking them through an army of goblins. Their gains were not small though. Their bags, which used to be full of food a few hours ago, were now full of gems. And they could now kill a goblin as if it was a chicken. They did look miserable though, with their clothes ripped and various healing scars showed on their skin, while Victor still looked clean and tidy, as if he was here for sightseeing. They didn't know how he did it. But those goblins would miss him every time. That's the difference between beginners and a professional, they thought. Look ahead. Victor's sound brought them back to reality. They looked ahead of them to see that Tom and the others behind him were walking from the opposite direction. They met in front of a great gate. The boss's room. Tom, who was inspecting their ripped clothes, seemed to be in a lot of pain though. Chapter 56. Cure. The first thing everyone saw was Lily, who ran to Victor and hugged him tightly. She has been thinking about him since he left her. His trick of making her jealous worked too well, it seemed. She began to ask him if he was fine, as she checked his body. Peter smiled and greeted Victor and the girls with Arya, who looked a little relieved after seeing that her little brother was safe. As for Tom, he didn't dare to look at anyone. He just took a brief look, and it already took all his strength for him to act as usual. Why are their clothes this damaged? He decided to stay away for a while. So he stood there looking at the boss's chamber gate. The goblin general was locked inside and could only order the goblins without coming out. That is how the dungeon worked. And this tunnel is considered safe, as no goblin can enter here, so they would have time to prepare for the boss fight. His team needed some rest. Tom, who has succeeded in distracting himself from looking at the girls, didn't enjoy his peace for a long time. Margaret, who saw him distracted, couldn't help herself but hug him from the back, pressing her bulging chest against his arm. This is something she did a lot in school. She enjoyed teasing him, but what happened next was something she didn't expect. Tom, who turned his head and looked at her chest absent-mindedly, let out a sharp scream and rolled on the ground while holding his crouch. What happened? I didn't do anything, said the frightened Margaret. Peter, who didn't even flinch, shook his head and assured her. Don't worry, it's Tom. He was poisoned by some goblin, and whenever he sees something that arouses him he will suffer immense pain. He said with a laugh that he was trying hard to hold back. Ah, what an evil poison. Who would create such a thing? She said as she looked at Tom, who was suffering on the ground. She glanced at the others and noticed Victor's smirk. This is not one of schadenfreude but of admiration of one's evil deeds. Could it be that Victor was the one who poisoned him? That's impossible. But why is it that her female intuition was telling her that it was him, and her intuition was never wrong? She had to give Victor some additional thoughts. He is not as simple as he seems. Anna, try to have a look at him, you are a healer after all, she said to Anna, who was a little shocked by Tom's scream. Ah, a healer, Tom shouted and stood up slowly. The pain was easing up. Anna, can you help me? He asked, flashing his shiniest smile. But it looked pathetic with his hunched back and his hands holding his nuts. Of course, said Anna as she ran to his side. Where is the injury? She asked while she inspected him with a blushed face. Ah, I was hit on my thigh, but the pain is down there, he said as he embarrassingly pointed to his couch. I will try my best, said Anna with a low voice. She put her hand on Tom's thigh and began to activate her skill, while Tom looked away and began to think of random things to distract himself. The healing had no effect as the wound was already healed when he took the healing pill earlier. I will try to heal there, your thigh is already fine, said Anna with a blushed face. Then she put her hand on the couch of Tom, who was not fully ready, and activated her skill. Tom was only able to stay focused for 5 seconds, and then as he felt the coldness of Anna's finger in his crotch, he pushed Anna away and started to howl and roll on the ground while holding his balls. Although he was in pain and the girls knew that, they couldn't help themselves but laugh a little. His look was hilarious. It does not seem to work, said Anna as she shook her head. I am a merchant and can sell you some poison antidote for the right price. How about 100,000 coins, said Victor as he pondered and looked at Tom with an evil smile. The store does not work in the dungeon. I have already tried, I am a merchant too, Arya warned Victor. What do you mean not working? I just bought this healing pill yesterday, said Victor as he took out a healing pill and surprised her. Arya quickly operated the store and discovered that it was online now. Why didn't it work earlier? She didn't know that Victor had just unlocked her store. He wanted Tom to hate her. Miss Arya, can you sell me that antidote now? Or do you want to jack up the prices like Victor? Asked Tom with a cold voice. His impression of Arya has just reached a very low level. No, the original price should be okay, she embarrassingly said. Good, I will transfer the coins to you. You better not cheat me this time, Tom spat at her. Arya, who was a little aggrieved, quickly operated the store and bought the antidote, which magically appeared in her hand. Tom snatched it quickly and put it in his mouth after inspecting it. He really needed this. Soon a cold feeling spread around his body and could feel that some form of liquid was oozing out of his skin. The poison was out, he thought, and began to laugh in delight. But Victor knew that those must be the poisons accumulated by Tom in his lifetime, like car smoke and heavy metals from food. It seemed this was his first time taking that pill. Victor wanted to do something to deflate Tom but didn't need to. The first thing Tom saw when he looked back at his friends was their tattered clothes that made them look sexy. I am sorry for scaring everyone, I am now cured. Ah, before anyone could speak, Tom started to scream like a dog. The pill did not work. Victor shook his head as he laughed. It seemed that he needed to lead everyone in Tom's stead. Let's rest for a bit here and eat something. This is a safe area, and the bosses behind that door can't leave, he said. Everyone nodded their heads and sat down to have a meal and inquire about the others' adventures. They were all relieved that everyone was fine. Relatively, if they included Tom. Arya soon came to Victor's, who was taking out some dry foods from his bag, and whispered in his ear. I have something to ask you, she said. Victor nodded, then deliberately took a sneak peek at Tom, who was watching them like a hawk. He grabbed Arya's hand and took her to a secluded corner. He knew what she wanted to talk about. Tom looked at them whispering and began to bite on his teeth. That bitch Arya must be mocking him with Victor right now, he thought, but he will get his revenge on them later, once he is strong enough. Arya didn't know that what she just did had entirely separated her from Tom. She just looked around to make sure that no one was around and then asked Victor. Were you already a player? And does the family ritual involve awakening players? She asked. As someone who didn't have a pure bloodline, she had the choice of whether to attend the ceremony or not. She chose not to attend when she heard that it had a 50% death rate. But still, it was something she regretted some nights before she slept. Yes, and yes, you don't need it anymore as you are already a player. Just keep it a secret, he said. Why do some people die in the ceremony every year then? The family uses an artifact that has a certain chance of not awakening the players but killing them. The dungeon would awaken all players. But they have to get out to enjoy it. Consider it another form of testing. We will talk later when we come out, he said as he turned to leave. Would I have survived? She asked him as he was about to return to his bag. Probably not, he said as walked away without looking at her. She nodded and left to join the others' conversation as they listened to how Margaret led the goblins away. Victor returned to his bag, took out his chair and an energy bar, then sat down and began to eat it. Lily, who stood behind them, also found something to eat. Did you do it? She whispered to him. Yes, he answered, making Lily frown a little. But she nodded in the end, as whatever her young master did, it was the right thing. As for poor Tom, he had to find a secluded place to eat. The twins tried to approach him and ask him if they can help him. But his answer was that the best help they can offer him is staying away. So she could only sit with the rest and listen to Peter's boasting about how many goblins he slew. But his tale was quickly overshadowed when the girls showed him their bags full of gems. How many goblins did they kill? Peter wondered. Arya, who was surprised, quickly offered to buy all those gems and sell them to the system for them. The girls didn't know what to do, so they looked at Victor, who nodded his head to them, then returned to his food. He intended to raise Arya's merchant class level, and the best way to do that was to make a lot of transactions. His collection of gems was bigger than all of theirs combined, so he didn't care about this little money. Arya quickly began to use her merchant skill to process the gems and replaced them for coins according to the standard price. They disappeared one by one, making her gain a considerable profit margin. It was 3 hours later when Tom stood up. Let's go slay that boss, he said without looking, just took his dagger and makeshift bag which he used to carry the gems, and headed to the door. He didn't trust Arya anymore, so he would not let her handle his treasures. The others looked at each other and nodded, then started to head to the door one by one. Victor took Lily's hand and walked behind them. In the battle, just focus on protecting yourself and the girls. Ignore me completely even if you see me get hit, he whispered to her. She was not convinced but could only nod and follow his orders. After we defeat the boss, we will be able to enter the inner chamber where the dungeon's core is located. Make sure that Tom is the first one to enter there, he added as he quickly followed the others, leaving her to wonder, what was her young master's plan? Chapter 57, Boss. When Tom pushed open the huge door, they could see a huge green-lit cavern behind it. Tom didn't explain anything, he just held his dagger and entered. The others looked at each other and followed nervously. Victor followed them with Lily from behind. That cavern had a flat tiled gray floor. It was not empty, as it had numerous boulders of various sizes poking from the ground, creating a gray jungle. On a huge boulder in the center, they could see the goblin general sitting silently as if it was meditating. When they entered the chamber, the gate automatically closed behind them with a thunderous sound, frightening them. The dungeon's boss slowly opened its red eyes and stood up gazing upon them, making the girls shiver involuntarily. It had 2 times the height of a normal man, and 3 times the width, and was draped in brown leather armor which covered most of its torso and shoulders save some parts where its green emerald skin showed. It was covered in red markings that were intersecting like some kind of a shamanic spell. The big goblin turned its ugly head to inspect the newcomers one by one. It finally identified the strongest one between them, Tom. Victor was using his disguise so he appeared to be weak. The goblin stared at Tom and roared, as it raised a long rusty sword and pointed it at him. It was issuing him a challenge. Tom, who understood its intention, didn't say anything, just threw his bag to the ground and rushed forward to vent on this general, leaving his friends without instruction. Victor cursed at him for being an idiot and quickly activated his appraisal skill to see something he did not expect. *T, he thought. Enemy, the Goblin General's bodyguard. STR, 50. AGI, 45. Int, 10. LCK, 10. CHM, -20. Everyone, don't rush to attack it. Pair up and find a cover. There is a hidden enemy, he said, making the girls a little surprised. But the training he has been giving them quickly showed its results as they quickly found safe places to stand and kept their guard. Peter and Arya didn't do that. They looked at him strangely. Is he a coward? Why did the girls follow his command? Tom felt the same, but he dared not look at them or get distracted as he used his dagger to slash at the general, which retreated quickly. That general was very nimble and had a high defense. Fighting a sword with a dagger was tough. Luckily that sword was rusty, so Tom could feel it crumbling after every clash. Peter, use your arrows to cover me, Tom shouted to Peter, ignoring Victor. This is not the general. Just a decoy. Be aware of traps, Victor shouted back at him, making the girls tense up while Arya quickly found a place to hide. Peter, who was a little hesitant, followed suit, choosing a location where his back was covered by a rock wall and started to fire arrows at the goblin, assisting Tom. It's not that he completely trusted Victor. But if what he said was true, standing without a cover would be a stupid thing. Tom didn't believe Victor and kept attacking that burly goblin without rest. Victor frowned as he looked at that goblin fighting with Tom. A boss having an assistant is not unheard of. But not in a low-ranking dungeon like this. He would have to change his plan a little. Lily, scout the surroundings and find the real general, Victor whispered. Lily, who trusted Victor completely, immediately used her skill and found the enemy. It was hidden inside a hole within one of the high boulders. It had its bow aimed at Victor. She had no time to warn him when the hidden goblin fired the arrow. Careful, she shouted and quickly put her body between the arrow and Victor's body, getting hit in the shoulder. Victor gasped in shock as he took notice of the origin of the arrow and quickly hugged Lily tightly and pulled her to hide behind a nearby boulder. We have a goblin archer here, be careful, he shouted as he threw his bag to the ground, then helped Lily lay down and began to inspect her injury. Everyone tensed up and began to look around. Even Tom, who was engaged with that large goblin. He wanted to look back but couldn't get distracted. His enemy was giving him a hard time. Victor didn't say anything but just tore Lily's shirt and inspected the wound. She was lucky, it didn't hit any vital organs. But the arrow passed to the other side, so she would not be able to use her left arm for a while. The goblin used a pointy arrow, so removing it was easy for him. He quickly garbed Lily's veil and used it to tie the area around the wound to stop the bleeding, then removed the arrow in one smooth pull. After taking the arrow, Victor frowned as he smelt a rotten stench on it. Poison. He looked at Lily's beautiful eyes which were looking at him. She didn't scream or yell. Just smiled silently. She didn't care about all the pain as long as Victor was fine. But Victor could see some blackness around the wound. This must be hurting her really bad. He knew a few things about goblins' poisons and "pain" was the word that described them the best. I will punish you later, he said to her. Didn't I order you to ignore me? I have my own defenses, he said as he tightened the wrap around her shoulder. Lily wanted to say something but was stopped by Victor's lips touching hers, making her freeze in shock. Don't do something this stupid again. I am not that weak, he said in a soft voice. I will go take care of it. His attacks can't reach you here, so just stay alert and wait for me, he said as he threw a healing pill in her mouth, and another in his. He didn't swallow it though. This was for contingencies. He quickly left Lily to rest behind the boulder and went out by himself to get the antidote which should be on the general. He will get some revenge too. This surprised Lily, who didn't want him to leave her. It was dangerous out there. But she didn't dare stop him. She already disobeyed him once. And she had no power to follow him as she felt her body grow numb. So she could only watch him leave with her misty eyes. When he was facing her just now, he didn't let his true feelings show on his face. But after leaving the cover of the boulder, Victor looked more savage than that goblin. No one was allowed to touch his girls. Especially his Lily. Victor moved swiftly from behind one cover to another and headed to the boulder where he last spotted that thing. He activated his disguise skill so no one could see him. In fact, he was using the disguise this entire time. His actual position was a few feet away from where everyone saw him. Lily didn't need to shield him at all, as the arrow would have missed anyway. It was a little hard to locate that archer because it was constantly changing its position to find a suitable sniping location. The girls have all gone into hiding after hearing Victor's warning, so it was hard for the archer to find a suitable target. Eventually, Victor was able to find it after a few minutes as there were not that many good sniping nests here. It was hiding in another hole, aiming at Peter, who was using a bow he took from some goblin to assist Tom. Enemy, the hidden goblin general. STR, 30. AGI, 55. Int, 50. LCK, 15. CHM, -50. Skill, Tactical Planning A. Ranged Attack A. Poison Brewing C. It was not an attacking general, but a tactical one. Fortunately, it had no survey or identification skills. This would be easy, thought Victor as he approached it slowly. The general had a small body, with two pointy ears spiking out of its big wrinkly head. As if it was left in a pickle jar for too long. Its long bony fingers were holding an exquisite bow while some bags were hanging in its leather belt. The antidote was in one of them. It felt that something was wrong, and intended to change its position, but it was too late. Victor had already jumped over the boulder and was now standing over its head. He didn't hesitate as he silently slit the general's head, then quickly grabbed its equipment and bags, then the golden gem that fell out as it disintegrated. This boss was easy, as it was not a named monster. It had low strength and no armor or helmet on its head. It probably couldn't find one its size. He quickly returned to where he left Lily and removed the disguise skill as he hid behind the boulder. Then he used his appraisal skill to identify the antidote and feed it to her. As for his spoils, he quickly tucked them inside her backpack. Tom, who was fighting the bodyguard, was about to activate his berserker skill when his enemy suddenly stopped and let out a loud miserable scream as it started to disintegrate. A big red gem and a rusty sword fell from it. Tom suddenly realized that what Victor said was probably the truth. This was not the boss. Who killed the boss and took its gem and treasures? Damn it, he thought as a blue screen appeared in everyone's vision. Dungeon cleared. Congratulations. Countdown until closing. 59 minutes. What does that mean? How can we leave? Asked Peter, who felt that this boss fight was like a dream. Neither he nor the girls played any active roles. Before anyone could answer him, one of the chamber's walls collapsed, revealing a big tunnel. Tom, who was angry, quickly jumped to grab his bag, and entered the tunnel, making everyone a little surprised. Why the hurry? He is going to the rewards room. Quickly follow him, or would he take everything for himself? Said Victor, secretly influencing their feeling to think of Tom as a selfish person. Especially after his recent poor behavior. He left his hiding place and headed for the tunnel while carrying the blushing Lily like a princess. He didn't look heroic though, as he also had to carry 2 bloated backpacks on his shoulders. Is Lily fine? Asked Arya as she followed. Yes, she is fine. I already gave her a healing pill, Victor assured her as he hurried forward. But Arya felt that he sounded funny. Was he sucking a candy in his mouth? She wondered. They quickly entered the tunnel and crossed it to find a dazzling white marble room at its end. Tom was standing there holding a bronze chalice and hesitating whether to drink its content or not. They could see that it was placed on a pedestal that had 3 words written on its base in the system's script. Water of life. They didn't know it, but every player heard of this legendary cure. Only 3 drops were found in the world until now. This was the 4th one. Tom was hesitating whether to drink the golden drop of liquid inside the chalice or not. If he sold it, he would be super rich. Victor, who was helping Lily stand on her own feet, pointed at Tom with his finger and shouted arrogantly. This is the property of my family. If you dare take it, I will let them kill you, he said loudly, making the girls look at him strangely. This didn't fit his character. Tom looked at Victor coldly. No one can claim any treasures found in the dungeon. Who finds it, keep it. That was the rule anyway. But what Victor told him held some truth. If he left with this thing, it would be a little troublesome to escape with it. But when he wanted to drink it, his intuition told him not to. Not knowing what to do, he gave Victor a hateful look, but what he saw was Lily, who had her veil removed and her shirt torn, standing there with difficulty. How pretty, he thought absent-mindedly before the great pain struck him again. Ah, damn it, he thought as he drank the water in the chalice with no hesitation. What would all the money in the world be good for if he couldn't even look at a woman? Suddenly, he started to feel its cold healing power fill his body, and his life force improve a bit. After a few moments, the feeling was gone. Is that all? He thought. Did it work? He slowly sneaked a peek at Lily, bracing himself for the pain, but nothing happened. There was no pain, so he began to boldly inspect her and the other girls with glee like a pervert, as a smile slowly spread on his grim face. Ha ha, I am cured. He laughed loudly. You, how dare you? Victor, who was pointing his finger at him, threw blood and collapsed on the ground with Lily in his arms. The girls didn't know what happened as Anna sped to his side to check on him and heal him. What happened? Asked Margaret. I don't know, there is no injury, Anna said. But, he probably passed out because of anger, she added in a low voice. That was exactly what everyone thought, including Lily was holding him tightly, with an anxious face. But the reason was something else. Notice. Fate Shield was automatically activated. S-rank Destiny Backlash withstood. 99% of the damage was absorbed. This was the price of changing Tom's destiny. His plan has finally succeeded, but the Fate Backlash was too strong. Just a tiny bit of it had already messed up all his internal organs. Luckily he already had a healing pill in his mouth. He swallowed it as he collapsed. It was now healing him slowly. Dear Tom, you are mine now. He thought as he looked at his status screen showing the successful acquisition of a new blood slave. Chapter 58. Rewards. 1 antidote, 1 normal healing potion, 1 drop of Victor's blood, and 3 drops of 100% synthetic food coloring. Those were the components of the water of life that Tom drank. Victor didn't force Tom to drink it, he let the potion integrate with his body without a shred of resistance, fulfilling the conditions to make the blood seal skill trigger successfully. The seal was hidden on Tom's soul, marking him as a blood slave. It can only be removed by someone with higher strength and higher authority than Victor. It was all within Victor's plan. He used the dungeon's map to locate the chamber closest to the reward room. Then, all he had to do was to dig through the wall to get in. Like a heist movie, digging a dungeon wall is impossible as the players didn't have the authority to override the rules of the system. But Victor had the authority to do whatever he wanted. And those restrictions didn't affect him at all. Although he hired a team of goon goblins to assist, he had to do the digging part himself while they were tasked with transporting the debris. Sadly, the pickaxe was with Lily on the other side of the dungeon, so he had to manage with his poor dagger and some stone tools he took from the goblins. It took him 8 hours to dig through that thick cave wall. Although he suffered some minor accidents along the way, as he had no experience digging, he was able to enter the room in the end. Then, he replaced the real dungeon's reward with the chalice he got from the antique store, filling it with the blood antidote mixture. He was lucky, this dungeon offered 3 rewards, so after stuffing the treasures, he had to take the 2 additional pedestals outside the room and bury them in the hole. Using his dagger, he engraved a few words in the system script on the remaining pedestal. Although everyone can read it, no one could write it before the reckoning. But he came from the future where its secrets were unveiled, and it was the universal script of the world. After finishing his business, he closed the hole on his way back and used his disguise skill to make it look like a normal marble slab. It was not perfect, but if you didn't know its location you would not find it. And when he just re-entered the room, he threw his bag in front of it for an additional cover. Tom was still laughing, not realizing that he had just become a toy in his nemesis' hands. Now, Victor didn't intend to use Tom as a regular slave. Because Tom would never truly submit to him. He may reveal his secrets or deliberately create problems when doing missions. So Victor had to arrange a better way to control Tom. Laugh now and cry later, thought Victor, who was laying in Lily's lap. He slowly opened his eyes to look at her worried face. "Don't worry, I am fine, just let me lie down for a bit and take a nap," he said, making the girls feel relieved. He was not fine though, that backlash was dangerous. The other didn't see it. But the moment Tom drank from the chalice, a thunder formed and instantaneously discharged inside his heart. So he could only spit blood and collapse. Tom didn't look him, but turned to his friends in a gentlemanly way. "Everyone, I am sorry about my rude behavior earlier," he said with a shiny smile. But no one was looking at him, as everyone was occupied inspecting Lily. Only now did they notice that she didn't wear her veil. Damn, how beautiful can someone get? Arya and Anna thought with envy. No wonder he didn't care about my confession, he already had such a girl beside him. Margaret pondered with a frown. But that Lily is too pretty, I don't mind being her lover too. Peter was the most shocked one. He was standing there with his mouth wide open, drooling without care. Only the twins, who have already seen her face, were not shocked. Lily, who felt something was wrong, quickly searched her bag for another veil and put it on. But didn't deter her admirers, only making them look harder. Ahm, Mina coughed a little, waking everyone from their trance, as she turned to Tom and responded to his apology that no one seemed to have heard. "It's okay, Tom, we understand, you were in pain. We are all glad that you have been cured," said Mina. She sounded as usual, but in her heart, Tom is not in that high position anymore. Being in pain was no excuse for being a selfish jerk. In addition to that, she clearly saw that perverted look in his eyes earlier. It was the same one Nick used to inspect Mana and her. "Aren't there any other rewards?" asked Peter, who woke up from his trance and began to thoroughly check the empty room, turning his head to look at Lily every now and then. Usually, there would be 1 to 3 rewards in a dungeon. It seems this chalice was the only one here. But that can be expected, as this was only an F-rank dungeon, said Tom as he inspected the chalice in his hand. It looked strange. Could it be an artifact? He will keep it and find a shop to appraise it later. "Then how do we leave now?" asked Margaret as she inspected Victor, who was peacefully napping with Lily playing with his hair. She wanted to be in her place. "Don't worry, when the countdown finished, the dungeon's door would open to the outside world and we would be ejected to the place we entered from," Tom said with his usual confident smile. But he was not looking at her but at Lily and Victor. He was feeling a little jealous. He wanted to be in his place. His smile suddenly stagnated as his facial expression changed from that of delight to a confused look. The others didn't know what happened. Before they could inquire, Tom's face turned white in fright as he suddenly turned around and ran back into the dungeon, leaving just a few words. "Sorry guys, I forgot my keys back there," he said, disappearing into the tunnel without looking back. "What keys?" shouted Margaret after him, but got no response as Tom was already far away. "What is wrong with him?" she asked as she looked at the others, who shook their heads in confusion. "Let's not care about him," said Peter dejectedly. He didn't like the way Tom was behaving today. He seemed a little possessed. "Maybe he doesn't need us as friends anymore. We are going to attend different schools anyway," he lamented as he found a place to sit down. "Ah, didn't Tom tell you about the elite school?" asked Anna. "What about it? Why would I want to hear him bragging about it in front of me?" he asked dejectedly. "It's not that, you are a player now, so you can enroll too. The special class they offer is meant for players. Victor told us earlier," Margaret said, making Peter stand up again in surprise. "Really?" he asked Victor, who frowned a little but responded after a minute, "Ah, yes. Just one moment. Yes, no, very hot," he said absent-mindedly. Was he too absorbed in his filthy fantasias to be able to answer? That is what Margaret thought with her dirty little mind, not realizing that Victor was now busy scamming Tom. Victor opened his eyes after a minute or two, then looked at everyone and began to speak without raising his head from Lily's lap. "Ah, sorry about that. I was fantasizing about a hot girl I know once." "What was it?" "About the school. Yes, what they said is true. It will cost you 100 coins though, so exchange some with Arya or borrow it from the others. And you don't have to be dejected about the rewards. In about half an hour the dungeon would close and we would be kicked out. During that process, we would be awarded experience points depending on our contribution to the dungeon's clearing. With enough experience points, you would level up and gain attributes and skills," he said with a relaxed voice. "Ah, and take some of that glowing alga growing in the caves and spread it on your wounds. It would let them heal without leaving scars. I saw a pretty goblin girl use it, trust me," he added to the girls, making all of them except Arya look at each other wanting to laugh, before scrambling to find some of it. Arya shook her head slowly. Those girls trusted Victor too much, she thought, but after a moment of hesitation, she decided to try it too. There was nothing to lose, and she didn't want those healing wounds to leave any scars. Peter shook his head and followed the girls. He didn't care about the algae, he just wanted to peek at them treating their wounds. Mina seemed to have a wound on her thigh. "Lily, you too. There is a jar in my bag full of that stuff, take some and put it on your shoulder's wound," he said as he saw everyone leave. "Take all the boxed stuff and treasures in my bag and put it in yours, and leave all the camping equipment in mine," he added to Lily in a soft voice, making her nod in understanding. "Now I have to continue my dream about you, so don't disturb me again," he said as he closed his eyes and returned to his nap with a broad smile. Lily, whose face was blushing, slowly grabbed the bag and opened it, took the jar, and began to apply the glowing algae on her wound. It was really miraculous. The damaged skin slowly began to heal. It would take a while though. After that, she quickly rearranged the stuff in the backpacks as Victor told her, while making sure not to disturb Victor, who's still napping on her lap. About half an hour later an alarm sounded in everyone's head. Dungeon closing. Awarding process initialized. Thanks for participating. The dungeon was successfully integrated with the world. Everyone looked at the shimmering dialogue as their vision went black. Another reward screen appeared. Victor looked at his screen with a smile. It was worth it. Goblins killed 325 hundredths. Reward 32,000 express. Boss hidden goblin general killed 1/1. Reward 10,000 express. Dungeon clearing contribution 80%. Reward 40,000 express. Dungeon exploration 100%. 10000 express. Dungeon discovery 10000 express. Plus 10 free attributes. Total score 102000 express. Level up. Level up. Level up. Level 8. Express 12,000 20,000 till next level. Authority +1. Error. Could not modify authority. Upper limit reached. Exception. Strength +5. Agility +10. Intelligence +12. Luck +4. Charm +5. Order +10. Skills acquire. Dagger throw C. The skill admin appraisal leveled up. Can now appraise non-players. The skill admin merchant leveled up. Cooldown time reduced. The skill unlimited disguise leveled up. Added smell disguise. The skill blood seal leveled up. Number of slaves 2 greater than 3. Your class has leveled up. Fate resonance increased. Please allocate the additional 10 points. The first 5 levels cost 10,000 express each while the next 10 would cost double that. Leveling up gets more difficult the more you level up. As for the authority, he was not afraid. The bug he triggered back then was fixed by the system. So no such bugs are possible anymore, and his authority would not overflow back to 0. Victor smiled as he split the 10 points between the order and the luck. Those two were the most troublesome to increase. And it seemed the skills he used most have leveled up. This was the problem that caused many players to stagnate. Before the reckoning, one needed specific conditions to level up. Clearing a dungeon was one of the cheapest ways to level up, although it tended to be a little dangerous sometimes. Now, let's see the results. Victor thought as inspected his new info screen. Name: Victor von Weiss. Level: 8. Class: Fate Weaver 1. Authority: Infinity. Strength: 56. Agility: 63. Intelligence: 74. Luck: 32. Charm: 30. Order: 32. Skills: Admin Appraisal, SSS +1. Admin Merchant, SSS +1. Blood Seal, SS +1. 1/3. Contractor of Doom, S. Unlimited Disguise, SS +1. Not bad, he thought as he felt his weightless body becoming heavy again and hitting the forest ground outside the dungeon. This was a very rewarding trip. Many problems were solved. Now comes the real trouble, he thought as he opened his eyes. Chapter 59. The Whimsical System. Beep. System notice. Congratulations host, for binding the whimsical system. Your actions of selfishly drinking the water of life, which was a great treasure that could extend the life of a dying person, just to save your nuts has touched the system. Warning. This system is whimsical and its missions are too. However, it will help you on your path to greatness. Tom, who had read many novels, knew what this was. Isn't this the stupid plot device those authors use to give the protagonist a proposal and to drive the plot? How could it be real, he thought. System notice. Of course, I am real, isn't the world becoming like a game? The system answered his question. Can you read my thoughts? Tom asked. System notice. We are connected by the soul. Your survival and mine are the same. Our thoughts are connected so you don't need to talk to let me hear you. Tom looked at his friends who were looking at him strangely and wanted to say something, but the system threw a massage at him. System notice. Keep the existence of the system a secret or you would be punished. System notice, number 2. Critical mission number 1: Unfair Trade. Go to the secret chamber shown on the map, dig beneath the red rock, take the treasure and bury the chalice in its place. Rewards. The Flaming Sword. In case of failure, the host would lose all his abilities as a man. With that, a map of the dungeon appeared in Tom's vision. He needed an hour to reach that chamber. This doesn't make sense, he thought. Why do I need to follow its command? He thought again, but stopped the next moment as he felt the pain he had just been cured of returning slowly. An annoyed system notice. The system felt that the host was not complying with the mission. Considering whether to administer a light punishment. 109876. Tom's face turned white. He didn't want to feel that pain ever again. He didn't wait and quickly ran out of the room, heading to the secret chamber on the map while shouting some excuse to his friends. He felt a little relief as the feeling of pain disappeared. He wanted to curse at the system but he didn't dare to. He had no time to waste as that chamber was too far. After a while, the system threw him another massage. System notice. You must understand, the system is doing this for your own benefits. System notice, number 2. The system has detected an unusual interest in twin girls. The system has detected an unusual interest in a beautiful girl. The system had just found that those girls are very hot. Then the system went silent, making Tom, who was running, feel strange. What a whimsical system indeed. After about 5 minutes, Tom heard a beep again. What now? He thought. System notice. The system has analyzed the footage of the girls in the host's memory and found out that they are no longer virgins and seem to enjoy some kind of a perverted play with the man with purple hair. That can't be true, thought Tom. But the system didn't respond. Can the system tell me what family does that man belongs to? He asked the system. System notice. Not enough whimsical points were found. The whimsical system, being whimsical, had decided to answer the host's question. Victor von Weiss, elite member. Shit, thought Tom, he will not be able to do anything to Victor or Lily for now, as the von Weiss was one of the strongest families. He didn't want to anger them by hurting an elite member. System notice. The host has no reason for despair as he would one day tremble all those families with the help of the system. Tom then tried to ask the system some other questions, but the system responded that he needed more points for the answer and he had 0 points now. But he suddenly thought of a different question. How can I get rid of you? He asked without expecting an answer. But to his surprise, the system responded. System notice. The whimsical system does not like the tone of your question. However, due to its whimsical nature, it will give you a reply. The system can be removed if the host has more authority than the system. Warning. The removal of the system may lead to its demise. That makes sense, thought Tom as he decided to focus on raising his authority so that one day he would show this system who was the boss. It took him 15 minutes to get to the secret room using all his speed. He was gasping for breath when he found that red rock, and indeed, after some digging there was a flaming sword buried shallowly there. System notice. Flaming sword, a rank equipment. Can inflict burning damage. System notice number 2. 5.00 minutes until the closing of the dungeon. Bury the chalice or fail the mission and lose your manhood. Tom, who was smiling, didn't hesitate and quickly buried the chalice. After discovering the sword he began to believe the system. He could feel the sword's power as he swung it around with delight. This system may be a little whimsical, but it was not bad at all. Every protagonist needed an assistant after all, Tom thought as the world around him slowly turned black. The dungeon was closing. System notice. Congratulations on completing your first mission. One whimsical point added. The system will now shut down for maintenance and integration. The process would take a few hours. System out. Tom looked at it and didn't care, he would not need it for now. But with it, he was ready to begin his journey for greatness. Nova, wait for me, he thought. Goblins killed 100 500ths. Reward 10,000 express. Boss Goblin Bodyguard killed 1/1. Reward 2,000 express. Dungeon clearing contribution 10%. Reward 5,000 express. Dungeon exploration 20%. 2,000 express. Total score 19,000 express. Level up. Level 12. Express 2,020 thousandths till next level. Authority +1. Strength +2. Agility +1. Intelligence +1. Luck +1. Charm +1. Only 10% contribution. Who was it? He wondered. It must be Lily or that hateful guy Victor. Damn it, he thought. But after looking at his rewards he began to laugh. With the additional authority he now has 7, which would make him rival many hidden powers elders. Authority points are rarely granted. So getting one was like hitting the jackpot. Poor Tom, who was laughing happily, did not know that he had become a slave and was now being completely monitored and controlled by his nemesis, Victor, aka the whimsical system. The blood slave skill allowed the master to feel, see and control everything the slave did. But that would usually take a toll on the master's body and soul. The slave mark was imprinted directly on the soul, making the slave's body a puppet in the hands of the master who can easily kill or punish him if needed. The further they are apart the weaker the influence is and the heavier the skill's toll. So Victor decided to scam Tom into thinking he was an imaginary system that grants missions. He would punish him or throw him a bone every now and then to make him more obedient. He was basically using the classic carrot and stick strategy. That sword was one of the dungeon's 3 rewards. He chose to give it to Tom for 3 reasons. The first one was to cover his tracks and make Tom get rid of the chalice that could be traced back to him, whilst the second was to increase Tom's trust. The last reason was to arm Tom with some good weapon. Victor didn't want to leave his new dog toothless. He will let Tom put that sword to good use later. Chapter 60. Arrested. Victor opened his eyes to look at the orange sky above his head. It was sunset. They have been inside for a day and a half. Not bad considering he was planning for a 2 days trip. Looking around him, he saw everyone was starting to get up. Especially Tom, who gave him and the girls a piercing glance. "Did you find your keys, Tom?" asked Margaret, who stood up and started to dust her tight clothes. "What keys?" Tom asked stupidly before he remembered saying something like that when he left the reward room earlier. "Ah, yes, they have fallen in a previous tunnel, so I had to return and fetch them," he said as he looked at Margaret and the girls whose clothes were full of holes. "Why are their skin so shiny?" he thought to himself. Could it be that? No, impossible, it must be a light trick. Even Peter had somewhat healthy-looking skin. They didn't know what Tom was thinking. But their skin was really shiny and tender, like a new baby's skin. They have used the algae Victor told them about. And its effect was beyond magical. Victor, who was thinking about the same thing, nodded his head. That stuff would become one of the main products his family pioneered after discovering this dungeon. "I thought there would be some police and ambulance waiting for us when we come out," said Peter as he looked around at the empty field and the dark deep hole in the ground behind them. I told the drivers that we may spend the night in the forest, so they would not call anyone. I have to remind you though. Keep the fact about the dungeon a secret, he said, making the others nod. Now prepare yourselves, we will go down after I make a phone call, he said. His phone has a satellite connection, so worked on all locations regardless of coverage. So Victor took the phone and called his father, Theodore. It took him 3 rings to answer. Did you do it? His father's cold voice came from the other side. Did what? Victor played dumb. Did you kill Nick? He asked impatiently. Although he didn't really like Nick, he was still his son. What? He is dead. I would never do such things. When did that happen? Replied Victor in surprise. The night he visited you. His car exploded on the way back. The family has already sent investigators, they would be here tomorrow. You are the prime suspect, he said. Ah, fine, I am innocent anyway, so don't worry. I just wanted to inform you that I discovered and cleared a dungeon on the Cloudy Mountain. Victor said he must make sure his father claims this area before others do. Did what? I searched for that dungeon for a whole year and found nothing. Tell me about everything, he said in a changed tone. It was no longer cold. Forgetting everything about Nick, it's not like he didn't care about his son's death, but a dungeon discovery was a big thing that affected the entire family's future. And he had a lot of other sons. Victor began to tell him how he was going on a camping trip and how he discovered the dungeon and cleared it with some friends. He also explained about the algae he found. Are you sure about that algae? Asked his father. An F-rank dungeon did not usually have anything of value. Only small amounts of otherworldly materials. But every now and then there would be a dungeon discovered with some magical herb or fungus that could only be cultivated inside it. Those things can be used on normal humans after some dilution. So they were a huge revenue source. Yes, pretty much. I tried it on my friends and it works like magic. It may need some further studying. But it would become the new hit in cosmetics. So I would like to claim 20% of the profits, said Victor with a smile. If what you said is true, you would only get 10% as you were trespassing on my mountain. Now go, we would talk later. Ah, and the police may be looking for you, don't make trouble, his father said as he hung up. Damn it, said Victor as he put the phone in his pocket. He expected his father to give him 15%, so he asked for 20%. But his cheap father only gave him 10%. It doesn't matter, he thought as he led the others down the mountain. 10% was a large amount of money. As this thing would be a massive hit. As for the police thing, he long expected it when he arranged for Nick to be killed. Are you going to cultivate that algae? Asked Margaret, who was listening into his conversation. Yes, I will send you and the girls a few boxes when the product launches, he said, making the girls smile. Although they packed some of it. Who doesn't want some for their family and friends? Victor nodded and looked at the girls who were cheering and appraised them in secret. Lily gained 2 additional levels while the others 1 level each. This was not bad considering they were just rookies and this was an easy dungeon. He gestured Lily to come near, then took out a white envelope and gave it to her secretly. Just for contingencies, he whispered as she nodded and took it. Those guys would probably try to frame him for Nick's murder. So he had to prepare for everything. Soon they reached the movie set, which was lively with all the lights and some explosion effects. They seemed to be filming some action scenes. Arya went ahead to look for the car drivers who were sitting next to a bonfire drinking beer. She quickly began to scold them for failing to inform her of Victor's instruction for them to wait for 2 days. Then she began to use her phone to make some calls, as there was coverage here and she had a lot of missed calls. Victor looked at the set and smiled. Not bad, this movie is going to be a hit. He should invest more in John Sigma, that guy was a gem. Not the one found in goblins' corpses but a real one. Victor White, freeze and put your hands above your head. A sound startled him and everyone else, who looked to see a female police officer with 3 other cops approaching. The female officer was waving a gun. Victor lazily raised his hand and turned to look at them. Officer Lee, we meet again. How did you know I was here? Are you stalking me? He said with a smile. I am arresting you for murdering your brother Nick White, she said coldly, ignoring his question as she cuffed him. He didn't resist. Players must not fight with the police in public or display their powers. So when most players are arrested they usually comply and find a way to escape later. The girls gasped in shock as they heard the charges. Especially the twins. Nick was dead. Don't worry, I would go out really quickly. I didn't do anything, he said to the girls with a smile. You would not go out again in a lifetime. You are charged with using explosives and murdering 3 people. I am sure that the car accident that day was also your doing. You must have been testing things for the final show at night, said Lee as she pushed him down the mountain. This idiot was as unreasonable as ever, thought Victor as he walked with her. His connections were not able to help him here, it seemed. His father had made things clear when he told him that the cops were after him. He didn't care as he had already arranged his cards. He only has to wait and see how this game will play. Take his bag. It may contain some dangerous substance, Lee said to her partner as she led Victor to the police car nearby. Watching Victor being taken away, the girls were a little anxious, especially Arya, who tried to call her father multiple times but couldn't reach him. Margaret was thinking whether this was the business that would take a few days that Victor told her about in the dungeon. Did he really kill someone and was waiting to be arrested? No, impossible. She quickly denied such a stupid idea. Lily frowned, then found an isolated corner to take out the letter Victor gave her and opened it to find a list of instructions beginning with, "If I were arrested, you would be monitored, so destroy this after reading." She quickly read everything before throwing the paper secretly in a nearby bonfire and watching it burn. "Miss Arya, we should get going too. We can't help him by staying here," she said as she headed to one of the vans. Arya quickly came back to her scenes and asked everyone to board. They were going back to the city. Tom was standing there smiling. This bad guy is gone, at last, he thought, and began to head towards Lily, intending to ride next to her. This was his chance. Maybe he would get a new companion tonight. System notice. The whimsical system is astonished by all the fantastic scenery of Mother Nature, and it has noticed that the host was getting a little fat. Quick mission. Return to the city on foot. You are not allowed to take any vehicle. Rewards. 100 coins. Failure. Lose all your hair. Damn it, thought Tom as he began to walk down the mountain. But those 100 coins are not bad for a night's work, he thought. Aren't you going to ride with us? Shouted Margaret after him. No, I have been gaining weight, so I need some exercise. He shouted back as he continued to walk. What is wrong with him? Is he really possessed? Thought Margaret as she sat next to the twins, intending to ask them about Victor's arrest. Do you know anything about the arrest? She inquired. Their fidgeting behavior has revealed many things. Mina looked at her sister, not knowing what to say. They were not allowed to reveal family secrets. It's okay, tell everyone. Lily, sitting in the back, said, thinking of what her young master wrote on that letter. His enemies will try to silence the witnesses or change the testimony. She has to find a way to spread the story of how he saved the girls. And this was a good chance. Mina nodded, then began to tell everyone of how Victor saved them from Nick, with some reductions. Everyone was listening with interest, even Arya, who was perking her ears from the front seat. The heroic tale of a young master saving his maids soon found its way online, to inspire a best-selling novel and a movie adaptation.